The great chamber of the Galactic Council had stood for 12,000 years. Its walls were made from the compressed metals of dead stars. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds formed inside. Representatives from 947 species had gathered here across the ages. They had signed treaties. They had declared wars. They had ended civilizations. But in all those thousands of years, no species had ever refused to kneel. Until the humans arrived. Ambassador L stood at the central podium, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he processed what he had just heard. His translator implant must have malfunctioned. There was no other explanation. "Repeat your statement, human delegate," he said, his voice echoing through the massive hall. The human woman stood alone on the circular platform reserved for new species. She was small by galactic standards. Her body had no armor plating, no natural weapons, no visible defenses of any kind. She was soft and fragile, wrapped in simple fabric coverings, and yet she stood there like she belonged. "I said no," replied. Her voice was calm. "Earth will not kneel to the Council. We will not surrender our sovereignty. We will not hand over our weapons, and we will not accept your terms." Silence crashed through the chamber like a physical force. 947 species watched. Millions of eyes, sensory organs, and perception fields focused on this single human female. Many of them had never seen a species refuse the Council. Some of them had assumed it was impossible. High Counselor rose from his elevated throne. He was ancient, even by the standards of his long-lived species. His crystalline body had grown massive over the centuries, and light refracted through him in patterns that indicated extreme displeasure. "You do not understand your position," said. "Your species has been traveling among the stars for only 200 of your years. You have 17 colony worlds. Your military consists of 43 warships. We have your capabilities. We know what you can and cannot do." Nodded. "I'm sure you do. The Galactic Council commands 12,000 species. We control this entire arm of the galaxy. Our combined fleet numbers in the millions. We have weapons that can crack planets open like eggs. We have technologies your scientists cannot begin to comprehend." "I don't doubt it," said. Leaned forward, his crystalline form catching the light. "Then why do you refuse? Every species that joins the Council must kneel. It is tradition. It is law. It shows respect and submission to the greater order. Those who refuse are," he paused, searching for the right word, "corrected." The threat hung in the air. Everyone in the chamber understood what correction meant. The Council had erased species before. They had turned into ash. They had scattered civilizations across the void until nothing remained but cosmic dust and fading memories. Did not flinch. She did not look away. She did not show any sign of fear at all. "Then correct us," she said. Ambassador L felt something strange move through his body. It took him a moment to recognize it as fear. He had not felt fear in over 300 years. "Explain yourself," demanded. His voice had lost some of its certainty. Stepped forward on her platform. "You've studied us. You've our capabilities, but I don't think you understand us. Not really." She looked around the chamber, meeting the gazes of species that had conquered star systems, species that had existed when her ancestors were still learning to make fire. "Let me tell you what humans are." She began to walk in a slow circle on her platform. 70,000 years ago, my species almost went extinct. A supervolcano erupted on the population dropped to maybe 10,000 individuals. We should have died. Instead, we survived. We spread across our planet. We adapted to every environment: deserts, frozen wastelands, jungles, mountains, swamps. There is no place on Earth where humans cannot live. Al checked his records. The data confirmed her claims. Humans were persistent predators, capable of surviving in almost any conditions. But that was hardly unique in the galaxy. "We invented war before we invented writing," continued. "We have been fighting each other for our entire existence. We have developed thousands of ways to kill. We have built weapons capable of destroying our own world multiple times over. And do you know what? We use them on ourselves, on our own cities, on our own people. A murmur ran through the chamber. Several species shifted uncomfortably. The idea of a species that would destroy itself was disturbing. The idea of one that had done so repeatedly and still survived was terrifying. "You think your fleet impresses us?" asked. "Counselor, we've been imagining alien invasion since before we had. We've been planning how to fight them for centuries. We have entire genres of entertainment dedicated to the idea of hostile aliens. Your arrival wasn't a surprise to us. It was something we'd been preparing for our whole history." High Counselor's light patterns flickered with confusion. "You expected us." "We expected someone," said. "We didn't know who or when, but we knew someone would come eventually. And we decided long ago that we would never submit, not to any power in the universe. That's what humans are, Counselor. We are the species that does not bend." She stopped walking and faced directly. "You can destroy our colonies. You can burn our ships. You can even destroy Earth itself. But you will not make us kneel. We'll fight you with everything we have. And when our weapons are gone, we'll fight you with our hands. And when our hands are broken, we'll fight you with our teeth. We will fight until every last human is dead, and we will make you pay for every inch of space in blood and fire." The chamber had gone completely silent, not a single being moved. "And here's the thing you need to understand," said softly. "We're not the only ones watching. Right now, 17 human colony worlds are broadcasting this meeting live. 8 billion people on Earth are watching. They're watching to see what you do next. If you destroy us, they'll know. They'll have time to prepare, time to hide, time to scatter into the void and disappear. And no matter how many you kill, some will survive. Some always survive. That's what we do." She smiled. It was a thin smile without any warmth. "And in 100 years or 1,000 or 10,000 they'll come back. They'll remember what you did. And they'll make you pay. Not because they're ordered to, not because they have to, but because that's what humans do. We remember, we survive, and we never ever forgive." High Counselor sat perfectly still. His crystalline body had stopped refracting light entirely. He was processing information at speeds that would burn out most organic minds, and every conclusion he reached was worse than the last. The humans were not bluffing. His analysis was certain of that. They would fight. They would die. And they would make the Council pay prices that no species had ever demanded before. He thought of the Council's history. They had corrected hundreds of species over the species that submitted after a show of force, species that had been rational, logical, self-preserving. Those corrections had been easy, clean, efficient. But the humans were not rational. They were not logical. They would not preserve themselves at the cost of their pride. They were something the Council had never encountered before, a species willing to die for nothing more than the principle of standing upright. And there were billions of them, spread across 18 worlds, with 2 centuries of preparation and weapons designed for exactly this scenario. Ambassador L watched the High Counselor process this information. He watched the crystalline pattern shift from confidence to uncertainty to something that looked very much like dread. "We will discuss your request," said finally. His voice was quiet, careful. "The Council will reconvene in 10 cycles to deliver our decision." Nodded, "We'll be waiting." She turned and walked off the platform. Her footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. Every being watched her go. Many of them were already calculating new threat assessments. Many of them were already afraid. The doors closed behind her, and the chamber erupted into chaos. Thousands of delegates began speaking at once. Arguments broke out between species that had been allies for. Some demanded immediate action against the humans. Others counseled caution. A few quietly suggested that perhaps the tradition of kneeling wasn't so important after all. In his private chamber, High Counselor sat alone. He was older than most stars in the galaxy. He had seen civilizations rise and fall. He had made decisions that shaped the course of history for thousands of years. But today, for the first time in his impossibly long life, he felt small. He pulled up the human records and studied them again. Their wars, their atrocities, their art and music and literature, their endless capacity for both creation and destruction, their stubborn, infuriating, magnificent refusal to accept any limits on what they could become. And he understood something terrible. The Council had not discovered a primitive species to be inducted into the galactic order. They had discovered a predator, a patient, clever, adaptable predator that had been sharpening its claws in the dark corners of the galaxy for 200 years. The humans would not bend, and now the Galactic Council had to decide what that meant for the future of civilization itself. Dimmed his internal lights and thought about his options. There were no good ones. There were only varying degrees of terrible. Somewhere in the void, human ships waited. Human colonies watched. Human minds planned and schemed and prepared. And for the first time in 12,000 years, the Galactic Council was afraid. 3 days passed, then 5, then 10. The Council met in secret sessions. Arguments grew heated. Old alliances cracked under the pressure. Species that had stood together for thousands of years found themselves on opposite sides of a question none of them had ever imagined asking. What do we do about the humans? The military faction demanded war. They pointed to the Council's history of successful corrections. They calculated the firepower needed. They drew up plans for a swift, overwhelming strike that would eliminate the human threat before it could grow any larger. But others disagreed. The scientists had studied human history in detail. They had found records of something called guerrilla warfare. They had found stories of small groups of humans fighting against impossible odds for years, for decades, for generations. They had found examples of humans building weapons in caves and basements, of civilians becoming soldiers overnight, of entire populations choosing death over surrender. The economists calculated the cost of a long war against a species that refused to give up. The numbers were staggering. Even if the Council won, the price might be too high to pay. And there was another problem, a problem that made the strategic discussions pointless. The broadcast had not been bluffing about that. Every word of her speech had been transmitted across human space. Billions of people had watched. Billions of people now knew exactly what the Council intended. Billions of people were now preparing. Intelligence reports came in from human space. They were terrifying. Colony worlds were fortifying. Military production had increased by 800%. Civilian ships were being converted to warships. Scientists were working on new weapons based on technologies the Council had never seen before. And everywhere humans were training. Young and old, men and women, farmers and factory workers and teachers and children. They were not panicking, they were not fleeing, they were getting ready to fight. Ambassador L read the reports in his private quarters and felt his fear grow deeper. He had studied many species in his career. He understood their motivations, their weaknesses, their breaking points. But humans had no breaking point. Their entire psychology was built around resistance, around survival, around winning even when winning was impossible. He thought about the human concept of spite. It was a fascinating and horrifying idea. The willingness to harm yourself just to harm an enemy. The willingness to lose everything just to make sure your opponent lost something too. No other species in the Council's database had developed this trait. It was uniquely, terrifyingly human. On the 7th day, High Counselor called a final meeting. The chamber was packed. Every species with a stake in the decision had sent their highest representatives. The tension was thick enough to taste. Everyone knew that whatever happened next would shape the galaxy for to come. Rose slowly. His crystalline body had dimmed over the past week. He looked tired, ancient, uncertain. "We have reached a decision," he said. His voice was heavy. "The Council will not pursue correction of the human species." The military faction erupted in protest. Voices rose in anger and disbelief. How could the council show such weakness? How could they allow a new species to defy tradition? How could they let this insult stand? Raised a crystalline limb for silence. Slowly, the chamber quieted. I understand your concerns, he said, but consider what we have learned. The humans are unlike any species we have encountered. They do not respond to threats the way rational beings should. They do not calculate costs and benefits the way we do. They are driven by something we cannot fully understand, something that makes them willing to die rather than submit. He paused, letting his words sink in. We could destroy them, perhaps, but the cost would be enormous, and even if we succeeded, we would create a legend, a story that would spread through the galaxy for eternity, the story of the species that stood against the Council and chose death over submission. Do you think other species would not hear that story? Do you think they would not be inspired by it? The chamber fell silent. Many beings exchanged uncomfortable looks. They understood what was saying. The humans were not just a military threat. They were a symbol of defiance, a symbol of resistance, a symbol that could inspire rebellion throughout the galaxy. The Council will offer the humans a treaty, continued. Not submission, partnership. We will grant them full membership with all rights and privileges. They will keep their sovereignty. They will keep their weapons. They will keep their pride. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings who had ruled the galaxy for. And in exchange, we will gain an ally unlike any other, a species that fights without logic, a species that never surrenders, a species that will stand beside us against any threat in the universe, simply because we treated them with respect. The vote was close, very close, but in the end the council agreed. 2 weeks later, returned to the great chamber. She walked to the central platform and stood exactly where she had stood before. But this time, she did not stand alone. Behind her came a delegation of human diplomats, scientists, and military officers. They walked with their heads high and their backs straight. High Counselor descended from his throne and approached the platform. For a long moment, the two beings stood facing each other. The ancient crystalline ruler and the young human ambassador, two civilizations meeting at a crossroads. Then did something no High Counselor had ever done before. He bowed. The chamber gasped. 1,000 species watched in shock as the most powerful being in the known galaxy lowered himself before a human. Welcome to the Galactic Council, said, as equals. Smiled. This time the smile reached her eyes. We look forward to working with you, she said. And in that moment everything changed. The old order was broken. A new era had begun. The galaxy would never be the same. But one thing was certain. The humans would never bend. And now, at last, the universe understood what that meant.